You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Leia. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Ed today. Ed is an individual who reached out through email about some things that he experienced out there in Oregon over the years. But Ed, it's a privilege to have you on the show today. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good.
Perfect. We were talking a little bit in the pre-show, but I'm excited to get right into this. So, Ed, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic right over to you. And feel free to share with us what you experienced over the years when you were out there in Oregon.
Okay. I first started out when I was about 16, 17, I think. But this was in California, somewhere around Eureka, Humboldt, Humboldt County. We were headed to Bakersfield, and we were cutting off on 101, my brother-in-law, sister and brother-in-law, and it was at night. And my nickname that they call me is Sonny. And so it was late at night when we were heading down the road, and I was asleep in the front seat. He was driving, and he stopped the car in the middle of the highway. There was nobody around, And he's like, Sonny, Sonny. And I woke up, and he's like, look at that. And the car was stopped, and I looked over in the embankment. It was a clear moon night, the full moon. And it was standing up kind of like on an embankment, and it walked down in front of the car, turned and did like a classic, Bigfoot look at us, turned back around and just walked over, and we can see it walk down an embankment and off, up into the woods. And I'm like, He was saying, well, let's go chase that thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I've been in the woods, since I was a kid. And I'm like, I've never seen anything like that. I was not about to go chase that thing. And I never said anything to my dad. I never said anything to him or anybody about that, because I wasn't for sure what I had just seen. And fast forward to when we were in Oregon, my ex and family, my daughter, we started camping there in Molalla River Corridor. That's in Marion County, in Oregon. And we went up there with some friends, and we started, seeing like eyes and stuff glowing back at us, and from the camp light, and didn't know what it was, but we knew something was moving around us, and there was more than just one. And it kind of scared us. We were like, we didn't know what it was. And friends of ours that we were with, they were started talking about later after we packed up and left, and they started telling us later about Bigfoot, and then we started seeing pictures. And they started showing me pictures and stuff of Bigfoot, and I got into that. And I was like, these pictures, that's the same thing I saw there in California, on that Highway 101. I said, that's the same thing I saw. And so we just kept going up to that spot where we camped at. There used to be like a ranger station there. And the ranger station was down. All it was just a foundation, but it was a big area out there. And we can put 2 or 3 campers and stuff out there, or more, and tents and stuff. So it was a pretty good sized area. And we'd gone there so much and we'd seen Bigfoot around there that we called it the Bigfoot camp. And so we started kind of getting used to them, and then we found some other people that we started going out with, and Ori, he had ended up he was doing like we got into like a group to go out and research them and stuff. And so we would either go up to that camp, or we've gone up to several different places. And there was one time that we went camping, just my family, and the Bigfoot camp was somebody else was in there. So we went down the road a little ways, which was about a mile down the road, where there's a bridge off to the side, and there's a little spot over there. And all these spots were not in a designated campground. And so we pulled off. There were just like pull-off spots where loggers, had logged, and there was a landing. And they were old, so, trees had grown up around them, and so there was a pretty good, nice place to camp. And we were up there camping, and my daughter, I think she was like a couple of years old, she started throwing a fit and started screaming and crying and carrying on. And we were wanting to go take a walk. And when we stepped out onto the road, all of a sudden I heard this scream, a scream that I'd never even heard before. I didn't even hear them whenever we were watching them over there at the Bigfoot camp. I never even heard that scream. And so I figured that's what it was. And so I got my daughter settled down, and so then I thought, well, I'm gonna try to imitate it. This was probably about 1993, and I never even heard anybody else doing these screams like this before. And that's what I decided to do. I was going to imitate what that thing was doing, because it kept screaming. And so I started imitating it. It'd scream and I'd scream. We went back and forth with screaming, and then pretty soon it stopped, and then we went ahead and went off and went on our walk and came back to the camp. And so then I started telling Ori and some of the friends that we were doing the group with that I was getting this thing to scream back with me. And so they started using me every time they go out into we go out into a research, we go out at night. And so they started using me to scream, and I get them I get them to scream and get them to call back, and we get some recording. Ori, he had taken some of the screams that we had, and he'd taken them up to, I don't know, some college. And the person on that college had said it was one of the best vocals that he had heard. And so every time I go out, I'd scream and get, callbacks. And I believe it was in 1994, my ex and I, we went there to the camp. We just went during the day just for we had a couple of friends that were there at the Bigfoot camp. So we just went there for the day just to visit with them. And so we go up there and we were talking, and then the one guy, Chance, he had been fishing and he caught a salmon, and he had said he'd had it on ice in the ice chest. And he said something was trying to get in his truck because he had a big crew cab, 4-door truck, and he was sleeping in the back seat, but he had that fish up there. He said something was trying to get in the truck, trying to open the door. And they were saying that they believed that could have been one there. So I went over to this tree that I always screamed at, because I did these screamings for a long time, and I realized you got to find a spot that will echo and throw that scream out. And so that's what I did. I had a spot there at that camp that I could scream and throw that out. So that's what I did. I screamed. And this was probably it was the end of summer, probably about September, and it was maybe 5 o'clock. It wasn't quite, it didn't go dark yet, but it was still light out. And so there was still pretty much light. It wasn't completely, it didn't go dark yet. So, but anyway, I went over by the tree and I screamed, and I got this one to scream back, which I thought, well, which I thought was kind of odd, because I thought they only did this at night, So I get this thing to scream back at me, and we kind of screamed back and forth toward one another, and then it just stopped. So I went back over, sat down at the campfire, talked with some of my friends there, and then I thought, well, I wonder if that thing will start screaming again. I think there's like 15 minutes passed, and I went back over the tree and started screaming, and this thing started screaming back, but I can tell it wasn't as high up. It sounded like it was like halfway down the mountain. This was on the opposite side of the road, up top of a hill, a mountain up there. So it sounded like it was about halfway down, and I screamed, it screamed. We did this for a little bit, and then it just stopped. Maybe about 3-4 screams, and then it just stops. And so I went back over and I sat back down, started talking to my friends there at the campfire. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to go back over and I'm going to scream again. So I did. I went back over to the tree and I started screaming. And it started screaming, but this time it sounded like it was almost by the road. And then it quit screaming. And I went back over again, back by the campfire, and sat down for about another 15 minutes, got up, went back over to the tree again. And I started screaming, but I didn't hear anything. So I just continued to stand there. And there was like where the camp's at, there's like a little road, kind of like a dirt road, that kind of old road that went around by the where there was that ranger station. And off on the other side of that was it went kind of dropped down a little hill and an embankment. And so back off in that direction, and it never did. This time it never did answer me back, but back off in that direction, I heard sound like a freight train come busting up through the woods. I mean, everything was just cracking and busting. And then it come up through that embankment, and it got up on that little road up there, and I was standing by the tree. We were probably no more than, I'd say about 50 feet, maybe 25 feet. It wasn't very far, between me and it. And I've had people say, don't stare at them, or don't stare at an animal, because when you do a stare off in their eyes, and then that, that's not good. But I mean, I was terrified, and I stared at it. It stared at me. And then I thought, man, I'm in trouble. And I took off running, and it took off running after me. And I was running up. My truck was on the other side of the camp, way back on the other side. And so as I took off running, I was watching it while I was running, and this thing, it as I turned, and I was still kept my head turned around and watching it, and as I turned to run toward where my truck was at, and as I was watching it, it stopped dead in its tracks, because it couldn't turn like what we do. We can turn while we're running, and this thing couldn't turn while it was running. It had to stop to turn. I talked to somebody else on a podcast one time about that, and he said that's typical primate. Primate cannot turn while it's running, and which I never knew that. And so I ran right past the campfire, right past where everybody was all sitting at. And I got past them almost to my truck. And all I did was I heard a boom, 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 boom. And a friend of mine had a 44, and he shot like 5 times up over its head. And he said the thing was about ready to run him over. And he said the 6th shot, it turned around and ran back into the woods. And I think if he hadn't have been there, I think it would have grabbed me and probably tore me from limb to limb. And so I can remember vaguely the color of it was like a reddish brown, and it seemed like it had red eyes, and that's all I can remember. I can't really really remember anything other than I knew it was on 2 feet and it stood up tall. And I think that what it was is it traumatized me. Whenever I saw it, I knew I was in trouble, and and it chased me. I think that's the reason why I didn't. I can't remember. But the thing of it is to me, I provoked it by yelling and screaming and had it come in there. to me, it was my fault. The things before then had never bothered us. We'd seen them all the time. We knew they were in the camp, and we knew they were around, and even screaming at them, get them to scream, and I never knew what these screams meant. But after that time, it's like I was kind of afraid to do any more screaming unless I was in front of my truck with the engine running, and I can just jump in there and go if I had to. But that was one of the incidents that I'd seen them. And then I had a cousin that came from Texas to Oregon, and so I thought I would take him up there to that. We didn't go to the camp. There was another spot across the bridge, and I took him up there just for a couple hours. Just drove up there, and so I was up there across the bridge, and the road, they chopped the road off so you couldn't drive through there, so we had to walk. And so we walked up that hill, and I could look off across the Molalla River, and then there was a road. You couldn't see the road, but then it was a gravel road, and because it's paved up to the bridge, and then it turns to gravel. And across that, and then up a hill, and it was bare up there, and so I was just showing him. I wanted to show him what we were doing and how I could call for him and stuff. So I was up there, and I started calling. These things, there was like 3 of them. They come out of a big, like, rocky area. And this was probably about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They come walking out of or like a gorilla or whatever. They come out of that rocky area, and they come around. They were kind of like half bent over, half walking, and they were kind of, kind of like a primate would. They came out, and they grabbed a hold of a tree, and they took that tree and they bent it all the way over toward the ground. Then they let that tree go, and it was just flopping back and forth one way to the other. And they were jumping up and down, whatever that stream meant, I don't know, but they were just having a good old time. And I told my cousin, I said, well, we still have about a mile to walk back out of here. And I said, I got to get out of here because, after being chased by that one, I thought, this is just, too uncomfortable for me. So we left. At the time, I didn't have a camera. I wasn't expecting anything. I was just, out there wanting to show him, what we were doing and stuff. And that was one incident that we had. We had one incident that my ex and we went there to the Bigfoot camp, and my daughter, she had had a rabbit, and we'd had it in a cage. And the first night, nothing bothered it. The second night, we kept hearing something trying to get that rabbit out of the cage. And so I got up out of the tent, walked over, grabbed the rabbit, put it in the tent. And we were telling our friend Ori about it. And then Ori had asked, he goes, can I borrow your rabbit? he said, I'm going to try to do the same thing, see if I can get one come up on us. And so I let him borrow the rabbit. They took it out there. I wasn't there that night. They did that, but I let them use the rabbit, and they put glow sticks around it. And Ori, he was interviewed by was it Matt Moneymaker and stuff, because they were out at some place where they were having a town hall meeting, and Ori told him about the rabbit incident. And so if you go on to Finding Bigfoot, you see that incident there with the rabbit and everything. That ideal, that's what that came from myself and my family. And that area where you'd seen where Matt Moneymaker and them, where they did some screaming in that camp, that was the same camp, and that I had that incident happen. I had another incident, and this was can't remember when this was. But we were in Estacada, which is it's over from Molalla. You got to go up and over to Estacada. And then again, we were just my friend and I, Mark. We were just driving around. We just went up to the mountains, not to do anything searching for Bigfoot. We were just driving around up there. I didn't have my camera. Didn't have nothing. And we stopped and we were looking down this ridge line. And Mark's like, there's something moving down there. And we looked, and there was one that come out of the tree line. It came down by the, where the saddle of the two mountains kind of come in, and it's bare on the one side. So we watched it walk on two legs, and it walked about halfway up that hillside. And we decided, let's just get in the car and go around. And, we try to find that road that's up there, because we could see a road up there. So we came around, but that road, it was gated off. They had a gate over that, so we couldn't go on that road. But we did see it. We were hoping to see it further up there. But that was one time that we had seen, and that I had experienced one. And then another time, and this was right, I think it had to been it was like November, the same year that I'd got chased by that one, but it fast forward to November. I went up there hunting, and I always say Bigfoot kind of saved me from getting a ticket, because I was doing deer hunting, but that was the first they closed deer hunting down for elk season, and I wasn't even thinking about it. I thought it was still, deer season. So I went up there to deer hunt, which this road that I took off on is just down the road from the Bigfoot camp, probably about a half a mile, or not even that. And there's a little road that kind of goes up. And I was up on that road for about a couple of miles up there. And I drove up there, maybe about 5:30 in the morning. It was still dark. And I pulled over by a tree. And I stopped there, got out of the vehicle. When it started getting light enough to where I could see to go out to make a stand. I get out of the vehicle and I come around to the back end of the car, and I could see the tree. There was one, and it must have been standing right by that tree. And I don't know if it was that same one that chased me before or what, because it was up in that same area. But that thing let out a scream, and the whole ground vibrated. And I've never have known of an animal here in the United States that could scream so loud that it make the ground shake. And I kind of looked up at that big Douglas fir, and I could see the top of it. It was just swaying back and forth. There was no wind, but that tree was just swaying. And the ground was shaking, and I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going back home, So I went ahead and went back home. I mean, it scared me. And so I went home, and then that's whenever I looked at the synopsis and realized that it was elk season, and I'm like, oh, I'm glad it turned around and told me to go home, because I could have got in trouble, But I know a lot of these incidences, we never did report them because Ori, he said he wanted to do his research and stuff, and he's like, I don't want people to know our area. This is our area, and if we start saying anything, and Bigfoot society, or not big, the finding Bigfoot people, they were around at that time, and Ori's like, I don't want any of them to know, because if we did, then they would kind of know our spot, and we would, people would come in here and start invading on us and might scare them away or something. So I kind of kept a lot of these things, just within the group. But I mean, this has been since the 93, 94. In the middle 90s is when we used to go out. And so anyway, that is all my experience that I've had of them. I know there was one time I was up in the woods, and we were just, a lot of times we just go up there to camp. I love the mountains. I spend most of my time up there. And we were just on a hike, my family and I, and I was hiking down the trail, and then I got off the trail and went down to the tree line, because I went down there out of the sight, because I had to go down and use the restroom, so I wanted to get down out of the sight. So I hiked way down to the bottom of there, and there was coming back up, there was a big stick that was laying beside a tree, and I was like, I wonder why somebody that hiked down here would leave their stick over there by the tree. So I picked it up and decided I was going to do a tree knock with it. And that tree knock, I mean, it echoed. I mean, you can hear it all around. And, that tree, it made an echo. And so I took that stick, and I went over to another tree, and I hit it. And it was just kind of like a thump, There's no echo, just a thump. I went to another tree, and I did the same thing. And all these trees around, they weren't making any noise. It wasn't carrying out. But I went back to that same tree, and I hit it, and you can just hear it just echo through the woods. And I don't know, but in my thinking, and I thought about it, I'm like, um, I wonder if that stick might have been left there by a Bigfoot, because that was a stick they were using to bang on a tree, and they know what tree to hit to make a noise carry throughout. Just like I kind of figured out going along through there, I kind of figured out you just don't go anywheres and make a scream. You can, but you got to kind of test the areas. You got to kind of know a good area to scream at to carry that scream throughout the woods, because you'll hit a spot that will echo that throughout. And so that's some of our experiences there.
And my goodness, that's incredible. I had no idea any of this was coming from what you had provided. Those accounts are absolutely wild. Thank you for sharing those. It sounds like some of them for the first time. I definitely have a few questions for you. You were in an actual research group, it sounds like. Are any of the other members of that group still with us?
I haven't been in touch with them for a while. I've moved to Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're in Oregon, and I haven't heard from any of them in a while. So one of them is Ori Ennis, and then Mark Stanislawski. He was one of the guys, and there was just other ones that would come in that Ori would invite in, that he would get a hold of and invite in. We had did stories through Western Bigfoot Society. We did go down there with them, but we never really did make it known, to to anybody. We didn't try to put everything out there. And Ori Hennis, and trying to think of what his son's name is, they were the ones that did the interview with that Finding Bigfoot, and they did an interview with them. I've done interviews before, kind of not this whole story that I'm telling, but I've done interviews, like I said, the podcast that I did one time with being chased by the one, and that was like in 2007, and that guy was the one who told me that it sounded like it was primate because of the way that it acted. I living here for a while. I think it was like in 2016 I started talking with this one guy, and I think he's got Campfire Tales or something like that. Curtis Jones.
Okay.
And we've become real good friends, and I've known him for a while. And I've told him about the story, and he'd asked me to relate that story. But other than that, I really have not gone out and really made it public.
Did you ever go out with any, like Peter Byrne or Henry Franzoni or any of those guys?
I had Peter Byrne when we first started realizing that something was coming around the camp, and we went back and camped there, But we called Peter Byrne, and we had him to come out there and check everything out. And he had told us because we did get a picture of a footprint, and he told us, he said, well, I don't think that's what it is. He says, I think it's just 2 feet. Somebody running around barefoot, and it's just 2 feet that merged together and makes it look wide and long. They kind of slid down the hill, and it's like, no, it didn't look like that. It was an actual footprint, and it didn't look like it slid anywheres. And so we felt, I don't know, I had bad things going, with him and with what he was trying to make us look like we didn't even know what we were saying or doing out there.
That is unfortunate. But that stuff does happen. Yeah.
Now I do know that those screams that you were there in California that happened in the 70s. What's that guy's name? He got the one that they sound like they were talking back and forth.
Ron Moorhead. Yeah.
Ron Moorhead. Yes. Yeah. And he has been there with us in our group. Ori invited him.
Okay.
I knew Ron Moorhead, and I listened to some of his tapes. We've talked to Ron Moorhead. So that was one person I know that was I didn't know how famous that guy was, and I didn't know anything. I just knew he was coming around. And we'd go out with him or he'd come out with us. And so we would go out at night, and that's when we would do our our investigations. And it was funny there, and this really, you could try it, and it happens, is Ori was telling me that animals do not like red light. It's not that they don't like it, they can't. When they see it, they're not stunned by it. Like headlights, a white light, they get stunned by a deer in the headlights, And so I told Ori, I said, what if I take some red cellophane and put it over my headlights and make it red? And so I did that. I bought some. I got up there into the mountains when it was at dark, and I took that red cellophane and I put it on my headlights and drove around. And I'd have deers come out. And a deer would come out and just walk right in front of the road, right in front of me, and kind of look over, like, but it never did faze them. They just kind of looked like, okay, there's something over there, And they'd look my direction, but it never did scare them. It never did. They just, but if you put red cellophane over your headlights while you're driving around in the mountains in the dark, you'll see animals they're not even fazed by those lights at all. So I don't know if you ever heard of that or not, but
no, that's an incredible. I've never heard that, and I'd be curious if other people have tried that. But that is a really interesting idea, and I like it for sure. Did you guys have a name for your group at all?
No, we never had it. Okay. We never had a name. We were just. I never really had any money to do anything. Ori, he had the money to go out and buy sound equipment, to pick up sound out in the woods. He bought cameras, infrared cameras, and that's how I kind of knew about what he was talking about with the with the red light, because with the infrared cameras, it gives off that red light, and the animals weren't afraid of that infrared. He said that, I think it was the infrared or something like that, because he did say that if he could take a white light, from a camera, and he can put something red over it, that it never bothered them. They would come around, but with that white light, he said they would come around. So that's why I thought, well, I'm going to put it on my headlights. And so anyway, that's what I started doing there. And but there's just all sorts of things that we've done that I've heard other people talk about. You can't do this, and it's at night. You can only hunt them at night, and it's like, no, I've seen them during the daytime, and like I said, I had that one come running in on me.
Oh my goodness!
And chase me.
That must have been incredible to experience that. Do you know if anyone still researches that Bigfoot camp area?
I have no idea, because I've since moved to Texas in 2007, and I have no idea, but I know they probably are still around there. And we used to go down there, and it just like, sometimes we would spend like a week at a time down there. And where they kind of get used to you. You see people come in and they set up a camp, and they're only there for a couple of days. When they finally start getting used to you, you pack up and you leave. And that's when the activity starts. If you stay there longer, then once the activity starts ramping up, then you're gonna, you might not, there's sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't, but we kind of knew that, if we stayed there a little bit longer, we would have more of a chance. And I worked at a job at that time. I worked at driving school buses. So in the summer I would have off. So I spent a lot of my summer there around in that area. And we had one time, our campers were on the back of our truck, and we went there to that camp. There is that road, and it kind of goes down a hill into another little spot. It's not very big, but Mark and I, he had his camper and I had my camper. We were kind of back to back down in there, and we were there at the campfire, and sitting around talking, and then all of a sudden we had stuff being thrown at us from over the camper. And it never did scare us. This was before I did all that screaming and stuff. But even after that, it never really bothered me, because we just, just figured they were playing with us. So we would have rocks and we would have things thrown at us, and they wouldn't hit us. If they wanted to hit us, they would have. And so then all of a sudden we were sitting there, and it was a big size chunk of log that we had sitting over there where we had our firewood at. And that thing come flying over top of us, landed between this one lady, Mary, and I, landed right between us. And we just turned around and we just said, "Is that all you got? You going to throw any more?" And it never did bother us, but if it wanted to take that log and throw it over top of the camper and hit us, it could have. but we knew that it was just, it had to have been playing because it laying right in between us. We had pine cones thrown at us, and they wouldn't hurt us or anything. It just, if we did have a rock thrown at us, it wouldn't hit as hard. And if they wanted to hurt us, they would have. You could tell it was just playing around. And but there was a spot before that Bigfoot camp. There was a spot before getting up there. We camped in there one time. Mark and I did, and my family. And we went down, Mark and I went down to the creek during the day. And when we came back out, something had walked through there, because the trees, you can see water was dripping from the trees about 7-8 foot up in the air. You can tell something wet had moved through there. And so Mark and I, during the day, or during the evening, the night, probably about around 10 o'clock or so, we walked down that little road and back off in that way. And we got chased then by something. We didn't see it. We could hear it running up after us, and we took off running and went back to the camp where our camper was at. And so it's like there was one down there, but it was aggressive. But the ones up there by the Bigfoot camp, it's like they never did bother us. And so we kind of got to figuring that out too, is that we got to kind of figuring out too, is that there was groups of them in places that were, some of them were aggressive and some of them they weren't, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Some of them were like they wanted to play around and just, But I've heard people say, "Oh, I got pine cones thrown at me," and it's like sometimes all they want to do is they just want to scare you off from where you're at. They're really not going to hurt you unless you provoke them. And that's the thing, is like, I got provoked that one time, and I provoked that one, so I can't. That's all on me, And so I like that one that screamed that it shook the ground. I don't know if that was the same one that chased me or what, or if it was a different one, but that was kind of like, it was my indication to leave. And so, I kind of, we kind of figured that out too. I'm not really even after being chased, I'm not really that afraid of them, Yeah, it did traumatize me, but I'm not like, I want to go back. There's places around. I had a friend of mine or one of the guys I worked with said they went to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and they said there's a lot of them there. And I want to go up there here, either East Texas or over in that area. I want to go over there and try to see if I can find anything.
Oh, you'd be able to find a lot of stuff. I have a few more questions about Oregon. I know that we've been talking for quite a while, but I do want to make sure I ask these. You mentioned there was a recording of the scream. Do you know anyone who would be in possession of that, or do you think it's probably a thing that might be lost to time?
I had one, but I lost it. But Ori might have one. If not, if you were able to get a hold of Ori, if you were to find him, if you were able to get a hold of him, he would tell you, because he had turned those screens and stuff, what he had. I think either it was a college in some kind of research place there in Oregon. And
okay.
So
I'm going to try to track him down. Did you ever have any research that happened in the Oak Ridge area or Willamette National Forest, or hear any Bigfoot activity from the Oak Ridge area?
Oak Ridge, where's
that would have been further
Willamette,
south? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The Willamette, the Willamette I did. I've had places there, because the Willamette National Forest is just right close, to around, well, the Molalla River area. That's all I think I think that's part of the Willamette. I'm not really for sure. I know it's close.
Gotcha.
I've had experiences up toward Estacada, which is a little bit further over toward the Mount Hood area. I've had it over in there. I've had places over there. Trying to think, the Aberfoyle, which is over toward Silver Creek Falls. In that area, we've gone over there, and we've had activity over in there, tree breaks and trees that were snapped off real high up in the air. And Ori and some of their friends, they did a research or whatever. They went over there and they camped out there in the Aberfoyle. And they had one surrounding their camp, and can't remember what he said. He said it got kind of violent over there, so they had to end up leaving. And Mark and I, we went back during the day, and that road was all cut off. It was trenched out, but we had to walk about a mile back in there where that camp was at. They had, and we walked back there, and it started getting dark, and we started noticing something was over there. And we started walking back, and it started following us, and then Mark was getting scared, and he was saying some, like, I think it's following us and this and that. And I told Mark, I go, just shut up. I said, we still got about a half a mile to go to the vehicle. And I said, I don't want to think about it. So, I mean, the more I thought about it, the more my heart was beating, because I didn't know what this thing was going to do, So, but the Aberfoyle is in like the Willamette National Forest area. So, but
there's one last question I want to ask. Just because I need to, because I'm kind of a journalist, but not really, right? So the Bigfoot camp, is it a thing where you would ever share any more details about, like, is it near a certain recreation area? Or because the Molalla River is a pretty long river.
Yeah.
Would that be anything where you'd be willing to share more information about where the Bigfoot camp is located?
Yeah, I'd share on it. Would
that be an off-air thing, or?
No, it's where that's at. It's out by, like, outside of Molalla, the town of Molalla. and kind of go up toward Dickey Prairie, and I think you take a right, and then the road runs off out that way, and there's like another road that splits off, goes up. Probably about 8 miles down that or up that road until you get to the Bigfoot camp. So, I mean, it doesn't really bother me any.
So this is
anywhere
like this is an unmarked area. I mean, it's not like by a recreation area. This is just you're going on forest roads. Yeah.
It's just on forest roads. It's where the Bigfoot area is at, what we call the Bigfoot camp. It's all a paved road. I mean, it doesn't have any stripes or anything like that, but it's paved. It's just not too far down from that road, about a mile, 2 miles down, it turns into gravel. It splits off by a bridge and it turns into gravel.
Okay. Yeah, I see South Dickey Prairie Road, you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, maybe there'll be someone who knows the area well enough to use that information to check it out. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And if there are people already checking out that area, I'd love to talk to you as well. But
okay.
Ed, this has been an incredible chat. I mean, I guess since you're the only person I've ever talked to who has been chased by a Bigfoot and survived, would you consider these creatures to be more like an ape creature or some kind of human creature? What was it that you got from them while they were chasing you?
To me, they more like a big gorilla or big ape, or like a big ape or something like that. Like I said, I never really got a full look in that one space when it chased me, because I think I was more traumatized to really get full detail of what it looked like. And so, but I see them as being a big primate is what I see them as being.
Gotcha. Well, you have some fascinating accounts, and I'm so glad that I talked to you, Ed. Really are. I mean, you reached out of nowhere, and I'm glad you did. If you do remember any more information or any other things that you want to share at a later time, I would love to talk to you again. But thank you so much for. And if you ever have any questions about Oklahoma or Texas, I do have some information about that. We can always talk later about that. But that would be fun if you were able to get involved down where you're at now.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for the interview and everything. And I appreciate, being able to do this and everything.
Yes, sir. And I'll be in touch. I'll let you know if I'm able. I'm going to try to track down this Ori guy. We'll see if he's still around. I'll let you know. But
all right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for chatting today, Ed. You have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed. Share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.